WarsawJS.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to speak about server components, and actually the talk is so long that it's been split into two parts. And we're going first to start with the evolution of the web architecture, just to understand why would anybody care about a new approach, especially that since kind of the entire recent decade, we've been using mostly single-page applications. Of course, some other projects have been using multi-page applications, though if we don't dive deep enough into the context, it would be kind of more difficult to figure out whether server components or partial hydration is actually something that you need. I am Tomasz, and I've been working in the industry since 2007. I've been working in Java, Python, PHP, a little bit of C++, a little bit of Perl, and since over a decade, I've been kind of focused on the JavaScript ecosystem mainly. What I do currently is I'm doing consultancy. So, for instance, if your company or your product has kind of obstacles to figure out, like, for instance, you are delivering too rarely, you would like to deliver more often, and it seems that you have so many teams that kind of you get stuck between each other. So you figure out, oh, maybe micro frontend architecture is for us. So you try to implement the architecture, and it seems that after the change, it is worse than before the change. And you figure out, like, something went wrong here. Like, what did we go wrong, right? And if people cannot find what is the obstacle, how to get things done correctly, you can reach out to me. And for instance, we will meet more often in the beginning once we basically figure out what the issues are, how to solve them. Then we meet less and less often, and this is basically what I'm doing. In my free time, I'm also doing developer training. So this is mostly, I'm kind of independent consultant. So you might have seen such tweets. That's basically, a screenshot of a tweet where it stated that index PHP is back. So what we can see in the screen is that we have something that looks as if it was, a server-side kind of templating engine. And it looks like if it was React at the bottom, but at the top we can see a SQL query. There is an async function, and usually in React you cannot have async components, async functions. So it's kind of a mix. And if you're not really into React or generally into frontend, it looks as if it was PHP or Python or Ruby. So these are server components, and people from outside the frontend community were figuring out, like, hey, what's the buzz about? What's the fuzz? It looks like we have just made a very big circle, and we have ended up in a place we were 20 years ago. So what's the whole idea behind it? So I would like to separate the facts from the myths, maybe not the facts from the myths, the facts from opinions. The issue that I find pretty often is that people mix facts and opinions. Everybody has some experience, some good experience or bad experience. You have been working in nice or bad projects, whatever. But the thing is, some things are basically objective facts, and other things are just our subjective opinions. If we mix them together, this is not going to be anyhow helpful. So what I would like to do is to deconstruct the whole concept. What are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? Where would it make sense? Who would need server components? Who is not going to need them? So our agenda for today. Eventually, we want to speak about React server components, and that is the use, pseudo hook, async components, etc. But first, we have to dive deep into the evolution of web architecture to basically find out what were the reasons for the changes. Like, why did we walk away from multi-page applications? We went through single-page applications. Most probably, this is what most of you are working in right now. We also have server-side rendering, static site generation, incremental site generation, and finally, React server components, or as I prefer to speak about it, partial hydration. Since many other frameworks also are thinking about implementing it or have already implemented that. So React server components is just a name for the React implementation, but let's say the universal approach is partial hydration. What I would like you to get out from this presentation is for whom is that, when should you use it, when not, why not, and so on and so forth. So, dear everybody, going back to the server a step back, an evolution, a revolution, or maybe an overkill? Because, like, why would we even get React, which was, or Angular, or Vue, or whatever is your favorite framework? Why would you take it and go back to the server to re-implement lots of the things when 20 years ago we actually wanted to go back from the server into the client? So it depends, actually. What is your use case? Is it a step back? Is it an evolution? Is it a revolution or an overkill? It depends very much on your company. What are your requirements? So for some companies, that would be a step back. For some companies, that would be a evolution. For others, a revolution. And, well, that's kind of a spoiler. For many of them, that might be basically an overkill. But it depends. On what does it depend? This is what we're going to speak about. So we've got a handful of those nice acronyms like SSR, CSR, SSG, ISG, RSC, etc. So we're going to dive deep into all this stuff. In order to understand what is this whole thing about, we need to speak about Web Vitals. So, dear everybody, we've got 3 Web Vitals currently, but only 2 of them are actually important for us. And that is largest contentful paint and first input delay. LCP is basically related to the visual layer. So it measures the time from when we start loading a page until the largest contentful, let's say, piece of the UI is being displayed to the user. Largest contentful piece is going to be either an image or a text, which is basically geometrically the biggest one. That is in the viewport. So how long does it take from the whole initial page load until what basically the user is going to take a look at initially? First input delay is about user interaction, or actually the delay, the JavaScript delay in the user interaction. So, for instance, if I have an application and I have a button or an input and I click actually something, then it is the time that I'm going to wait until from my interaction until JavaScript starts processing the thing, not until it finishes, when it starts. So basically, what is the delay? This is the delay caused by other functions that has been already scheduled in JavaScript's event loop. So everything that has been basically queued before. So if it's, dear everybody, very, very, very small time, can't recall what's the factor, something like a very small fraction of a second, that's kind of okay. So if you click and the application freezes and it reacts after, let's say, half a second, then your FID is very bad. Now, why am I speaking about this? Because the reason for why you would choose partial hydration or generally going back to the server is increasing or basically improving these metrics. If you don't care about these metrics, you can assume that server components and partial hydration is not for you. So if you're going to stay here, then it means that either you are interested in that or that perhaps in the future you would be working in a system that will require that. So, by the way, FID is currently the web metric that is going to be replaced in March next year by interaction to next paint. In very short, first input delay measures the delay for the first interaction, and the next one is going to sum up all the delays of all the future interactions. That's it. The evolution of metrics, in very short, is basically getting more user perspective instead of the technical perspective. For instance, a technical perspective is time to first byte. So that's the time length between the point where I start loading a page until the first byte is being received by the client from the server. So it doesn't, reflect user experience that much, right? At first byte, I don't see it, right? But the first thing that I can take a look at, either text or image, this is more user-oriented. So web metrics evolve. For instance, we've had, before LCP, we've also had first contentful paint. And how you could, technical metrics are easier to hack. How could we hack first contentful paint? Basically, display a logo. Is that anyhow meaningful or important? No. Can I increase FCP? Yes. So this is basically, how you can increase your CO. And this is also the reason why the people behind web performance are trying to make the metrics more user-oriented, because they do reflect users' experience way better. So in the first presentation, we're going to take a look at multiple timelines. As you can see here, it says there would be things taking place over here. And we'll be comparing the different architectures that we've had so far. So the first one, let's say that we are taking a step back 20 years, 30 years, something like this. And this is the architecture of multi-pages. So there is quite a bit of things taking place here. So at the very top, we've got the client, so basically a browser. We have a server, and we have a database. Now, the thing is, dear everybody, that when the user is starting to load the page, then we get a HTTP request on the left-hand side, and the server receives the request. Then it shoots the query to the database. Now the database responds to the server. Now we have rendering on the server side. And finally, we ship what is the index HTML. Of course, it's not a single HTTP GET request. There is, a handful of those requests because we need to load the JS, we need to load the CSS, some assets, fonts, etc., etc. So there is like a handful of them, though I'm just, going to simplify that. And now, we've got the page loaded with just here displayed in yellow. Now, when the user interactions kick in over here, there will be a new page reload. So from the moment that user interaction took place until the new page is loaded, we're basically displaying the old page like on the road. Now, could you please tell me what is wrong or what is good about this approach? Anybody? Idea? Like, why did we change that? So could you just point there, the mic? Oh.
Hello. So one thing that comes to my mind is that we always need to reload the whole page.
Okay, so my small suggestion is that ask, okay, so what? Like, I don't mean that your answer is wrong, but try to seek like, okay, so why is that a problem? Why is a problem a problem?
It makes things slower for the user that we need to do the whole round trip to the server for the whole HTML instead of just maybe doing an interaction just on the client side and just fetching the part of the data that we only need.
Okay, so what could the server do less? The first rule of performance is do less. So what could the server do less?
Data, only the data
send
required.
Less data, exactly, send less data. So for instance, instead of reloading the whole page, just reload only the part that relates to the interaction. Exactly. What else? Just behind you.
I can say something that good here in that approach, yeah? That from developer perspective, not user, yeah? It's less work because we do not care about the state of page and etc. Because we load new page fully from scratch. We get full page and etc. We need to work on the state of the page. Yeah, we do not need update data, etc.
Somehow yes, somehow no, because you do care about the state, but you care about the state on the server.
Yeah.
And it's easier because you basically reset the state every single time, which is kind of brute force, but yeah, somehow yes, but on the other hand, it's not that you don't care about the state, you basically move the state from one place to another. By the way, there is no silver bullet. Everything has pros and cons. So basically, you cannot remove a problem. You can replace a problem with a slightly smaller problem. That's important to understand. What else? Behind you?
Use cache.
What do you mean?
Like
cache for what?
Like each data.
If I'm making an interaction, I would like to show something. Like, would you cache like absolutely all interactions for all possible interactions of all possible users on all possible pages?
You can cache static. You can cache single request to server.
Yeah, but you can do pretty much the same, right? When you're doing client side. So for instance, if you're querying HTTP GET, you can query get, right? You cannot query post, put, delete, but you can query get. You can query get. Well, yeah. Here, could you just throw?
Oh, it's challenging.
So,
Guys, help me.
just throw it and people will just pass it.
Yeah. First of all, I'm as owner don't want to pay a ton of money for server and
For infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. And
Exactly.
yeah, when we have XML HTTP requests, so we can load what we want. And in this case, yeah, we can do all rendering on the client side in the browser. So yeah, we just send CSS, JavaScript, etc. from the CDN, and that's it. And I think it's a big benefit of client-side rendering.
Exactly. All that you've said makes sense, like more or less sense, everything that you've said, but actually this relates to money. And this is a major factor for why many applications basically went there. Now, if you're if you have a product that basically runs some super specialized software there that is going to be used by 100 people, that is not quite a lot, right? But highly specialized, you're not going to benefit from going into SPA, right? But if you are kind of, a big tech that, runs something that will be used by tens of thousands of users, then it will make a change, right? Because it is the server who needs to do all this stuff related to session management, related to rendering templates, related to et cetera, right? So infrastructure is not for free. And basically, the reason why so many applications, including, for instance, Facebook, right, went client-side is that they do not pay that much for rendering the stuff on the server because they basically push this responsibility to us, so we pay for electricity, right? That's actually the thing. And thank you. So one more reason is that server has way more responsibility than it could have if we basically move all the templating stuff into the client. Now, dear everybody, let's move forward into year 2003 or 2004, and there was something introduced called AJAX, right? Asynchronous JavaScript and XML, and currently that's basically HTTP, but some libraries still call it AJAX, never mind. The difference here is that instead of reloading the whole page, we're just reloading a piece of the page. Now, what problems were solved?
By the net, for example.
Okay, but is there any problem that has been solved entirely? Still, the infrastructure, the company has to pay for infrastructure, but slightly less. Still, the server has more responsibility than it could, but slightly less. Like, the problem is still there, right? Just let's say the scale of the problem is smaller, right? So we just decrease the scale of the problem, but the approach is kind of actually the same. So there comes a big revolution when JavaScript speeded up, like, there was a JIT, like just-in-time compiler implemented in many JavaScript engines. JavaScript speeded up a lot. So the big difference is that during the build time, on the server or whatever, any kind of automation machine, we are creating a bundle that is pre-produced, and whenever there is a page load, we are basically fetching the assets like the index.html plus JavaScript and CSS files, which has been pre-built. But the thing is, dear everybody, at the first step on the left-hand side, the screen is blank, right? Or you could basically, introduce a black screen or, I don't know, a green screen, whatever, never mind, but you have no content. So first, you need to load the scripts, then you need to execute the scripts. Then when you execute the scripts, you finally run some HTTP request, then you again wait for the server to respond. Then when we finally get the data from the server, we can actually render meaningful content. Now, what problems have been solved?
We don't need to pay for the server.
We don't need to pay for the server, exactly. Can you throw to the back?
Next thing, it's now the responsibility of the server. So it's not rendering the content right now.
Yeah,
it's
so
fully moved to the client.
Exactly. So a lot of responsibility for state management, for session management, for template rendering has been moved to the server. The server still keeps responsibility for domain, for persistence, etc., but server has less things to do. What problems were introduced?
CEO.
CO, one thing. Could you just throw there? No, here, just near the screen. Yep.
Yeah, but I had the same answer. It's a SEO.
There are two very important things more.
Time to interactive, of course.
Time to interactive, well, basically time to anything, right? LCP is worse. Time to no, first byte, no, but yeah, basically you're waiting for for any content to basically appear, right? So when you get the first thing, is actually will be way later. What else? Everybody, sorry. Bigger JS bundle. Yes, but still, since we are waiting for the initial content kind of 2 or 3 or even more seconds, the fact that you will have a bigger JS bundle that you need to download longer and pre-process longer, it's not a big deal since we are waiting, you know, way longer, right? So, one more thing. When you press a forward button or backward button, is it going to work?
It depends of the router.
It depends whether you actually implement it or not.
Yeah.
In MPA, it just worked and now it's broken, right? So these are the problems. So as you can see, we have fixed some problems by introducing another problems, right? And this is architecture. Like, it's not a situation, well, if you replace a problem with basically no problems, it means that was a design mistake. But if you shift from one architecture to another, it basically means you are going to pay for it. You are going to have some drawbacks. There are going to be some trade-offs. So now let's walk into would you like to take a break?
I've been informed. Can you hear me? Because my voice is loud. Right. I've been informed that actually pizza has arrived, and so if it's okay with you guys, hold on.
Yep.
We can hold on. No, wait. We can do 5 minutes of questions from our attendees. 5 minutes of questions for Tomasz, excuse me.
No problem.
And then we'll take a break. Does that sound okay? All right. Does anyone have any questions so far? There's a hand. Oh, they have a microphone.
So I realized there's one more problem introduced by single-page applications, and that is we are now sort of forced to use JavaScript when building web applications. And some people might argue that it was a mistake. So I just think, what's your opinion on that?
That's an opinion, not a fact.
Yeah,
so I prefer to discuss facts first and then opinions. So there are languages that are better than JavaScript. And this is a person who does, you know, lots of things in JavaScript. And that's the language that I know the best, though. So JavaScript doesn't deserve the place it is in, though the history of JavaScript is that we've had multiple browsers. We've had a specification that was implemented in many different ways. And there were, lots of big tech like Mozilla, Google, Microsoft, Apple, and so on and so forth. They had different JavaScript back 20 years ago, right? And now, if you thought about introducing one, let's say a better language, whether that would be C# or Rust or whatever. Now, if you wanted everybody, let's say you wanted to convince the entire, let's say entire world, to shift from JavaScript to something that is, well, better designed. Like, let's take a look at, 2 + 1, 2 - 1, or empty object plus empty array, etc. Then you would need to gather all those companies and try to figure out what would be the better language. Microsoft would opt for C#. Apple would opt for Swift, right? Google would probably opt for, I don't know, Python, Java, I don't know. And whatever, really, never mind. And you would have to go through this, boring 20 years of process of finally finding the consensus between them. And JavaScript has already gone through that path. And this is, I would say, the biggest value in JavaScript. Yeah. Like, you would have to go through the same process again. And if you ask me, do I see value in going through the same process again? No.
We have time for 2 more questions before the break.
Okay, that was one question. That makes sense.
Was that a statement or a question? I'm not sure.
That was a suggestion.
A suggestion. Okay, so if we have no more questions now, let's all take, it's a very 20-minute